I held the Queen's child in my arms. You've made your choice now, the Queen said. HFY. It was a mission unlike any other the human diplomat, Isaac, had ever embarked on. The stars outside his small ship glistened like distant memories of long-forgotten worlds. Yet, as he gazed out into the infinite expanse, the heavy weight of his mission pressed down on him. He was not just a representative of Earth this time. He was a potential savior of an entire species. The planet he was heading to, named Veliris, was unlike anything Isaac had ever seen. Its skies were perpetually streaked with shades of green and purple, the landscape a mix of towering mountain ranges and vast, endless forests that seemed to stretch on forever. But it was not the planet that had brought him here. It was the Queen, the ruler of this strange world, and her child. Isaac had only received briefings about Veliris and its people, the Valyrians, a species whose reputation as fierce warriors and powerful leaders had earned them respect across the galaxy. But there was something different about this queen. Her strength was legendary, yet she had always maintained a level of grace and wisdom that many of her peers lacked. Her name was Rithira, and she was respected for her intelligence as much as for her command over her people. But now the queen was facing a crisis, a personal one. Her child, the heir to the throne, was gravely ill. There was no cure. No medicine or alien technology had been able to save them. The child's name was Urin, and Isaac had seen a few images of the young Valyrian princess, but nothing could have prepared him for the moment when he would finally meet her. Isaac's ship touched down gently on the landing platform of the royal palace, a massive structure made of crystalline material that shimmered in the dim light of the planet's twin moons. The palace seemed to hum with an energy all its own, as if the very walls were alive. As he exited the ship, a sense of awe overcame him. This was not just the seat of power for an entire world, it was a symbol of their strength and their fragility. He was escorted through the grand halls of the palace by Valyrian soldiers who regarded him with caution but respect. The air was thick with anticipation. Isaac had heard rumors of what would happen if the Queen's child died: political chaos, war, and the end of the Valyrian lineage. The stakes were high, and he had a job to do. Finally, they arrived at the Queen's chamber. The large door opened with a soft hiss, revealing a room filled with soft, glowing lights and alien plants that seemed to pulse with life. In the center of the room, lying on a delicate bed of shimmering fabric, was Urin. The child's appearance was as alien as the world they lived on: tall, with silver-blue skin, delicate features, and bright, violet eyes that were now dull with fever. A steady, low hum echoed in the room, and Isaac recognized the sound as the Valyrians' way of maintaining a healing atmosphere, though it clearly wasn't enough. Isaac's heart tightened. He had seen many sick people in his time, but this child, this symbol of an entire people's future, was different. The weight of the moment hit him like a physical blow. Rithira, the queen, stood at Urin's side. She was every bit the ruler her reputation suggested: tall, imposing, with skin that shimmered like molten silver. Her eyes, a piercing amber, fixed on Isaac with a mixture of expectation and uncertainty. Her beauty was otherworldly, but her eyes carried the weight of a mother's desperation. "You are human," the queen said, her voice low and steady, though Isaac could hear the edge of exhaustion in it. "I have been told that your people possess unique qualities, especially in matters of healing. Tell me, is there any hope for my child?" Isaac took a deep breath. He had been briefed on Valyrian physiology, but nothing could have fully prepared him for this moment. The queen's gaze was intense, a silent plea wrapped in the strength of a ruler. He knew she wasn't asking for a miracle. She was asking for anything that could save her child. "Your Majesty," Isaac began, bowing slightly in respect, though he felt the weight of her gaze on him like a tangible force. "I have studied many species and their ways of healing, but I must admit, this is unlike anything I've encountered before. I will do everything I can to help, but I need your trust, and I need you to understand that there are risks involved. What I suggest may not work, and I can't promise any outcome." Rithira's eyes narrowed. There was a moment of silence before she spoke again, her voice softer this time. "Do you believe my child will die?" Isaac hesitated. He had never been one to sugarcoat the truth, but this was different. This was a ruler's child, the future of an entire world. "I believe that without intervention, Urin's condition will continue to worsen," Isaac said. "But there is a chance, an opportunity. It's not without danger, but I think there is a possibility that we can save her." The queen looked down at her child, her expression unreadable. It was clear that she would do anything for Urin, even if it meant taking a risk on something she didn't fully understand. "I will trust you, human," Rhaenyra said, her voice firm and resolute. "But know this, should you fail, I will hold you responsible." Isaac nodded, trying to hide the shiver that ran down his spine. He wasn't afraid of the queen's threat. It was clear that she loved her child deeply. But he could feel the weight of the promise she had made. Failure wasn't an option. He turned toward the bed where Urin lay, his thoughts racing. The technology on Earth had healed countless ailments, but there was something about this child, this alien, that was beyond his understanding. He wasn't sure if he could trust the medical equipment they had brought, or if he would have to rely on his own instincts and knowledge. "You will stay with us until we know the outcome," Rhaenyra said, her voice taking on an almost maternal tone. "If you succeed, you will have earned a place in our history." Isaac could feel the pressure building on him, but he knew one thing for certain: he had to try. For Urin, for the Queen, for the entire galaxy who would soon be watching closely. As he set to work, his mind focused solely on the task at hand, Isaac couldn't help but feel a deep sense of responsibility. He wasn't just saving a child, he was potentially saving a species. And the path ahead, no matter how dangerous, was one he had to walk. Isaac stood at the foot of the bed, his hands trembling slightly as he activated the advanced diagnostic device. The machine hummed to life with a soft, mechanical whir, its lights flickering as it scanned Urin's body. The child lay still, her breathing shallow and irregular, the dark purple veins beneath her skin more pronounced than before. Her once vibrant eyes were dull, lost in a haze of fever. Queen Rhaenyra stood by the bed, watching closely, her expression unreadable. The air in the room felt heavy, as though it could collapse under the pressure of her gaze. She was a powerful queen, feared and respected across the galaxy, but now she seemed small, vulnerable, desperate. Isaac knew that she had given him the chance, but if he failed, the consequences would not just be on him. They would be on her and the future of Veliris. "Will she survive?" Rhaenyra's voice broke the silence, quiet but full of authority. It was a simple question, but one that held a world of weight behind it. Isaac glanced at the device, his heart racing. The readings on the screen were troubling. Urin's heart rate was dangerously low, and the child's body temperature was fluctuating erratically, a clear sign that something was deeply wrong. He could see the thin sheen of sweat on the child's forehead, the quiet signs of a fever that had been raging for too long. "I don't know yet," Isaac admitted, his voice steady despite the tension that tightened in his chest. "But I think I can stabilize her. It'll require a treatment that's unconventional." Rhaenyra didn't move. She didn't speak either. She simply watched, waiting for him to continue. Isaac turned to the medical supplies he had brought with him. There were a dozen different vials and syringes, but he knew none of them would be the answer. The technology from Earth was advanced, but it was too alien to fully understand how it might interact with Valyrian physiology. He needed something more. He needed a deeper understanding of the child, of her alien biology, and he needed to find a way to adapt his methods. "I've worked with many species before," Isaac said, more to himself than to Rhaenyra. "But Valyrians are different. Your biology is unique." Rhaenyra didn't take offense. She understood. "Our physiology is not meant to be understood easily. We are the product of centuries of evolution in a world few can survive. Our immune systems, our genetics, they are designed to protect us from threats, not heal the broken." Isaac nodded, recognizing the truth in her words. The Valyrians were a tough, resilient people, known throughout the galaxy for their strength and longevity. But even the strongest creatures had their limits. And right now, that limit was being tested by the child who lay before him, her life slipping away with every passing second. He took a deep breath, focusing. He could feel Rhaenyra's eyes on him, but he blocked out the pressure. This was the moment. He had to do this. Isaac moved swiftly, selecting a vial of human blood serum. It wasn't a cure. No, it was something more experimental, a way to kickstart a healing process. He wasn't entirely sure if it would work, but it was all he had. He injected a small amount into a syringe and, with steady hands, administered the serum into Urin's arm. The child's body tensed slightly, and Isaac held his breath. For a moment, nothing happened. The seconds dragged on like an eternity. Rhaenyra stepped closer, her face tight with concern, but she didn't speak. The quiet was deafening. Then, just as Isaac began to wonder if he had made a mistake, Urin's chest rose and fell with a deeper breath. Her eyelids fluttered and her fingers twitched. Isaac's heart skipped a beat, and for the first time since he had arrived on Veliris, a spark of hope flickered in his chest. Rithira didn't move, but Isaac could see the subtle change in her demeanor. The tiniest bit of relief flashed in her amber eyes. She was still cautious, still uncertain, but there was a glimmer of trust beginning to grow. Isaac watched as the child's pulse began to stabilize, the erratic fluctuations slowing. Slowly, carefully, he adjusted the settings on the diagnostic device to track her progress more closely. He had made the right decision, for now at least, but he couldn't let his guard down, not yet. "Is it working?" Rithira asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. It was a question she didn't have to ask. She could feel the change, too, but still she needed to hear it from him. "Yes," Isaac said, his voice quieter now, a sense of relief creeping into his tone. "It's working. Her heart rate is stabilizing and her temperature is lowering." Rithira stepped forward, her gaze never leaving her child. She reached out slowly, brushing a strand of hair from Urin's forehead, her touch gentle, almost reverent. Isaac could see the Queen's love for her child in that simple movement. The power of an entire planet rested on this small child's shoulders, and yet she was just a mother worried for her little one. It was a rare and tender thing to witness. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The soft hum of the diagnostic machine was the only sound in the room. Isaac didn't dare break the silence, not when they were so close to a fragile victory. Finally, Rithira turned to him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of further reassurance. "How long before she is fully recovered?" she asked, her voice steady once more but still tinged with concern. Isaac hesitated. The serum had worked faster than he had anticipated, but that didn't mean the danger had passed. There were still risks. Valyrian biology was not predictable. There was a long way to go before he could declare the child out of danger. "I can't say for certain," Isaac admitted. "She's stabilized for now, but it could take days, weeks even before she's fully recovered. The treatment is experimental. We'll have to monitor her closely." Rithira's gaze softened, but the Queen in her never fully disappeared. She nodded, accepting Isaac's answer, though her concern was far from gone. "I will not leave her side. If you need anything, you have only to ask." Isaac nodded. "I'll need your help with the treatments. There are things I may not understand fully, and I'll need your expertise." Rithira didn't hesitate. "You have it, whatever you need." Isaac felt a surge of gratitude toward the Queen. He wasn't sure how much longer he would be here, or what the political fallout would be if he failed, but one thing was clear. The Queen's trust in him had already begun to grow. As the hours passed, Isaac continued to monitor Urin's condition, making adjustments to the treatment as needed. It was slow work, but the child's progress was undeniable. Her once-weak breathing was now more rhythmic. The color was returning to her skin, and the faint glow that marked all Valyrians was slowly reappearing. Isaac dared to hope. This might work. But even as he allowed himself a moment of optimism, he couldn't forget the bigger picture. He was here to help a child, yes. But the weight of the galaxy hung over him, and he knew that everything he did here would have consequences beyond the walls of this palace. The Queen had made her choice. She had put her trust in him. But as Isaac looked up at Rithira's stern yet hopeful face, he knew that trust wasn't just a gift, it was a burden. A burden he could never afford to fail. The days that followed were both long and intense. Isaac hardly left the side of the Valyrian child. Despite the growing evidence that the serum he had injected was working, there were still moments when the young princess's condition seemed to worsen. Urin would slip in and out of consciousness, and her breathing would sometimes become shallow again, as though her body was resisting the healing process. Isaac spent every moment he could adjusting the treatment, monitoring the progress of the serum in her bloodstream, and ensuring that her immune system wasn't rejecting the foreign elements. He had never worked with Valyrian biology before, and though the technology he had brought with him was advanced, there were still so many unknowns. Rithira, the Queen, stood by every step of the way. She had never left the child's side. Each time Isaac made a small adjustment to the treatment, Rithira was there, observing, her amber eyes never wavering. Her fierce presence was a constant reminder that this wasn't just about saving a life. It was about saving an entire civilization. And it was about something deeper. Her love for her child was something that Isaac couldn't fully understand, but he could see it in everything she did. in the way she whispered soft words of comfort to Urin, in the way she gently brushed the child's hair back from her face when the fever spiked again. There were moments when Isaac would look up from his work and catch Rethira watching him, her gaze full of questions, of expectations. The queen never spoke much. She didn't need to. Her silence, in its own way, was as powerful as any command she could give. But Isaac knew she was torn. She was a ruler, a mother, and she had placed her faith in him, a stranger in a foreign land. The relationship between them had shifted, though neither of them had acknowledged it out loud. Isaac had started to feel more than just the weight of the mission. He had started to feel like part of something bigger. There was an undeniable connection forming between him and the queen, not just as a healer and a monarch, but as two individuals who had both been thrust into a situation that neither had ever expected. It was late one evening, as the pale light of the twin moons filtered through the crystal windows, that Rethira finally spoke. Her voice was soft, quieter than it had been before. "Do you truly believe you can save her, human?" The question was simple, but it was not just about Urin anymore. It was a question about Isaac himself, about his abilities and his resolve. Isaac glanced up from the diagnostic machine, where the results were looking more promising. Urin's heart rate had evened out, and her temperature had dropped to a safer level. There was still a long road ahead, but the worst of it seemed to be over. He hesitated before answering. "I think I can," he said finally, "but I'm not sure what's going to happen in the long run. There's still a lot we don't know about Valyrian biology, but I won't give up." Rethira was silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on her child. She looked as if she were weighing his words, considering them carefully. Isaac could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. It was subtle, but it was there. A queen who had ruled an entire world, a queen who had seen countless battles and triumphs, now faced the most personal battle of her life, the potential loss of her only child. "Your people," Rethira said softly, as though speaking more to herself than to Isaac, "are so different from mine. You do not have our strength, our resilience. But there is something about you, about your kind, that is powerful. You humans do not give up, no matter the odds." Isaac blinked, surprised by the queen's words. He had heard much about the Valyrians' fierce independence, their unshakable strength. Yet here she was, acknowledging something about humanity that he hadn't fully understood himself: their stubbornness. Their ability to keep going, even when things seemed impossible. "Maybe it's because we know what it's like to lose everything," Isaac said quietly, lowering his gaze. His voice carried the weight of his own past, the loss of loved ones, the endless struggles to survive. It was a part of him that had always been there, an ache that never quite healed. "Maybe that's why we fight so hard." Rethira's eyes softened just slightly. She stepped closer to the bed, her hand brushing over her daughter's forehead as if she were trying to transfer her strength to the fragile child. "I have led my people for many years," she said, her voice steady. "I have made choices that have shaped the fate of this world. But this is different. This is not about strategy or power. This is about love, and I know you understand that, even if you do not understand my people." Isaac nodded, unable to find words. He had never imagined that this mission would lead him to such a personal connection with someone like Queen Rethira. In his training, he had been taught to focus on the job, diplomacy, politics, even war if it came to that. But nothing could have prepared him for this moment, for the bond that was quietly growing between him and this alien queen who was, in many ways, just as vulnerable as he was. The days passed slowly, with Isaac tending to Urin and refining the treatment. With each passing hour, the child grew stronger. Her breathing steadied, and the faint shimmer that marked Valyrian skin returned, like the light of a star emerging from behind a cloud. The queen watched, her presence unwavering, and Isaac began to feel as though he was no longer a stranger in this foreign world. He was becoming part of something much larger than he had ever imagined. And then, one day, Urin woke. Isaac was in the midst of adjusting one of the machines when he heard a soft, almost imperceptible sound, a faint rustling. He turned, his heart leaping into his throat. Urin's eyes fluttered open, and for a moment Isaac froze. Her violet eyes, once dull and lifeless, were now bright with clarity. The fever had broken. The child's gaze settled on him, and Isaac could see the recognition in her eyes. She was awake, aware, and alive. Rethira's sharp intake of breath told him she had noticed it too. The queen's face softened as she moved to Urin's side, her hand resting gently on the child's arm. "Urin," Rethera whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Can you hear me?" The child's lips parted, her voice weak but unmistakable. "Mother," she murmured, her words slow but full of love. I'm okay." Tears filled Rethera's eyes, and for the first time since Isaac had arrived, he saw the queen's strength crack. She bent over her daughter, brushing her hair away from her face, her fingers shaking with emotion. Isaac stepped back, giving them space. There was no need to intrude on such a private moment. Instead, he watched from a distance, his heart lightening as he realized the child was going to survive. Urin was going to be okay. And in that moment, Isaac knew that his place in this world, this strange, alien place, had been solidified. Not as a diplomat, not as a healer, but as a part of something greater. He had saved the queen's child, and in doing so, he had earned more than just gratitude. He had earned her trust. The queen's voice broke through his thoughts. "You've done it, human," Rethera said, her voice a mixture of awe and respect. "You've saved her, my child." Isaac met her gaze, his heart still racing, and nodded. "I didn't do it alone," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "You helped too, we did this together." The queen didn't respond immediately. She just looked at him for a long moment, her gaze steady. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but certain. "I owe you more than I can ever repay," she said. Isaac could see the sincerity in her eyes, and for the first time he believed it. But he didn't need repayment. All he needed was to know that Urin, the future of the Valyrians, was going to be okay. And as he stood there in the quiet of the room, Isaac realized that this mission, this moment, had changed everything. He had started out as a stranger in a foreign land, but now he was something more. He was family. Days passed since Urin had opened her eyes. The child's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. With each passing hour, her strength returned, her color brightening, and her once feeble movements growing stronger. Isaac had never been so relieved. He had seen many patients in his life, but this had been different. The pressure of knowing that the future of an entire civilization rested on his shoulders had been more than just daunting. It had been overwhelming. But now, as Urin slowly regained her energy, Isaac could breathe again. He had done what he came here to do. Rethera remained ever present, her fierce loyalty and love for her child evident in everything she did. But there was something else there, too, a growing respect for Isaac. She watched him work with a quiet intensity, her presence a steady force beside him. The queen, once so distant and aloof, had begun to soften, revealing a side of herself that Isaac hadn't expected. She would sit in silence while he worked, occasionally asking questions, offering suggestions based on Valyrian knowledge of their biology. Isaac listened intently, realizing how much he still had to learn about the Valyrians and their unique ways. There was wisdom in the queen's words, a deep understanding of life that only someone who had seen an entire species thrive could possess. On the 5th day after Urin had awoken, the child was sitting up in bed, her eyes bright and full of life once more. Her small hands reached up to touch her mother's face, and Isaac could see the bond between them, a bond that had only grown stronger through their shared trial. "She's strong, isn't she?" Isaac said quietly as he watched the queen and her daughter share a quiet moment. "Your people, they are resilient." Rethera turned to him, her amber eyes searching his face. She had never spoken much about her people's history, but there was something in her gaze now that hinted at a deeper understanding. "Valyrians do not fall easily," she said, her voice steady but tinged with something softer. "We have survived much. My people have faced destruction, war, and betrayal, and yet we endure. Urin will lead us. She has the strength of her ancestors in her." Isaac nodded. He didn't know what it was like to carry the weight of an entire world on his shoulders. He couldn't imagine what it must have felt like to be Rethera, to be so strong for so long, only to watch your world teeter on the edge of losing its future. "Her strength is a reflection of yours," Isaac said softly. Rethera didn't respond immediately. She just looked at Urin, her gaze full of a mixture of pride and relief. "Perhaps," she murmured, but her tone was thoughtful, as if she were contemplating something much deeper. She then turned her gaze back to Isaac. "You've earned my trust, human. You have saved my child, and in doing so, you have proven that you are more than just an outsider to us. You are part of this world now." Isaac felt a strange knot form in his chest. Her words held more weight than he expected. The queen's trust was not something that was easily earned, but there was something else in her voice now, something deeper, something that told him that his place here, his role, wasn't over yet. "I'm glad I could help," Isaac said, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't know what else to say. The truth was, he wasn't sure where his future was headed. His mission had been to heal Urin, but the Queen's words made him realize that the consequences of his actions were far greater than he had ever imagined. As if sensing the shift in the atmosphere, Urin looked up at her mother and Isaac, her small face lighting up with a smile. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice still weak but full of warmth. "I remember," Isaac's heart swelled. He had never been thanked in such a simple, pure way before. It was a reminder that no matter how difficult the task, the reward was always the same, knowing you made a difference. Rithira bent down and kissed her daughter's forehead, her lips brushing the child's skin with tenderness. "You are a warrior, my little one," she said softly, her voice full of love and pride. "You will lead our people one day." Isaac took a step back, allowing the Queen and her daughter to share their moment. It was clear that their bond had only deepened during this ordeal. And in that moment, Isaac realized that he had become part of that bond. His presence in this world, once tenuous, was now solidified. There was a new path ahead of him, one that he hadn't anticipated. He had come to this planet as a stranger, but now he was something more. He had saved the Queen's child. He had earned her trust. And somehow, in the process, he had become something far more valuable than just a healer or a diplomat. As the days passed, Isaac continued to assist in Urin's recovery. The young Valyrian princess grew stronger with each day, her energy returning in full force. She began to speak more, to ask questions about Earth, about humans, about everything she could not remember from her time in the fever's grip. Isaac found himself enjoying these moments of quiet conversation, where he could share his knowledge of the world he came from and listen to her thoughts about her own. One afternoon, as the sun began to set and the soft glow of the twin moons bathed the room in pale light, Rithira approached Isaac once again. This time, her expression was more serious. She stood at the doorway, watching him for a moment before stepping inside. "There is more at stake than just Urin's health," Rithira said, her voice low and filled with an edge of warning. "I know that you are here to help, but you must understand the political situation on Veliris is delicate. We cannot afford to show weakness even now." Isaac looked up, his expression serious. "What do you mean?" "The council is watching us," Rithira said, her eyes narrowing. "They will not be pleased to see that Urin's recovery has come so swiftly. There are those who believe that she is too young to rule, too weak to inherit the throne, and there are factions who will use her illness as an opportunity to seize power for themselves." Isaac felt a wave of unease wash over him. He had known that the Queen's child was important, but he hadn't realized just how precarious the situation was. There were political factions within the Valyrian court, factions that were willing to do anything to gain power. The Queen's trust in him was a sign that he had earned a place among them, but it also meant that he would have to navigate this political minefield with caution. "I didn't know," Isaac admitted, his voice steady but filled with concern. "What can we do?" Rithira's gaze hardened, and for a moment she looked every bit the ruler that she was. "We must show them that Urin is ready. We must prove to them that she is the future of Veliris, not a weak child who can be easily manipulated. If we do not act, we risk losing everything." Isaac nodded slowly, understanding the weight of the situation now. His role in Veliris wasn't just about saving lives. It was about shaping the future of this world, about ensuring that the Queen's legacy lived on through her child. And that responsibility, he knew, would come with its own set of challenges. "I'll do whatever I can," Isaac said, his voice full of resolve. Rithira gave him a brief, almost imperceptible nod. "Good, we will need you. You have earned our trust, human. But trust alone will not be enough. We will need to act, and we will need to act quickly." With that, the Queen turned and left the room, leaving Isaac to reflect on the new path that lay ahead. He had come to Veliris with a single purpose, to heal a child. But now, it seemed, his mission had expanded. He was no longer just a healer. He was an ally, a trusted advisor, and the future of an entire world rested on his ability to navigate the delicate politics of this alien court. Isaac stood by the window, watching the twin moons rise higher in the sky. The stakes had never been higher, and as he looked out over the vast landscape of Veliris, he realized that he had already made his choice. There was no turning back now. The days seemed to blur together as the political tension on Veliris grew. Urin's recovery was now undeniable. She was no longer the fragile, feverish child Isaac had found on the brink of death. Instead, she was vibrant, her once pale skin glowing with health, and her voice no longer weak but filled with curiosity about the world she would one day lead. But even as she healed, the looming shadow of uncertainty continued to hang over the palace. The factions within the court that had once doubted her strength were now watching closely, and their intentions were far from clear. Isaac had spent countless hours at Urin's side, helping her regain her strength, teaching her about Earth and the many cultures and species he had encountered. But his role had expanded far beyond that. He had become a confidant to Rethera, the queen. He had earned her trust, but with that trust came a responsibility he hadn't anticipated. His days were no longer filled solely with medical treatments and observations. Now, he found himself caught in the political web of the Valyrian court. The queen had been transparent about the stakes. The council had already begun to question Urin's fitness to rule. Some believed the princess's illness had revealed a weakness that could not be overlooked, while others saw it as an opportunity to seize power. The court was filled with ambitious politicians, all vying for influence, and there were whispers of factions preparing to challenge Rethera's rule. One evening, as Isaac sat with Rethera and Urin in the royal garden, the quiet beauty of the scene felt like an illusion. The garden was peaceful, with flowers that shimmered in the soft light of the twin moons, but underneath the serenity there was an undeniable tension in the air. Urin was picking at the petals of a flower, her small hands working carefully, while Rethera stood by the fountain, her posture rigid, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. Isaac looked at the queen, sensing the weight she carried. She had always been so strong, a leader who had fought for her people's survival, but now, in the face of the court's discontent, she seemed vulnerable, as if she were carrying a burden that threatened to crush her. Rethera turned to him, her amber eyes searching his face. "You must understand, Isaac," she began, her voice low but firm. "This is not just about Urin's health. This is about the future of Veliris. The council believes that my daughter is not ready to rule. They think she is weak. And they believe that if they act quickly, they can take power from me." Isaac stood up from where he had been sitting. The weight of her words settled heavily in his chest. He had known the stakes were high, but hearing it spoken aloud so plainly made everything feel more real. The future of an entire world was in danger, and the queen's child, the future monarch, was under threat from within her own people. "I understand," Isaac said, his voice steady. "What can we do?" Rethera's gaze hardened, and Isaac could see the queen in her now, the ruler who had commanded respect across the galaxy. "We need to show the council that Urin is ready. We cannot let them see her as weak." "She will not be the pawn they think she is. I will not allow it," Isaac nodded. "But how do we prove that?" Rethera's eyes narrowed, and a small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "By giving them a demonstration." Isaac furrowed his brow, not sure he understood. "What do you mean?" "You will train her," Rethera said, her voice sharp and commanding. "You will teach her the ways of diplomacy, the art of leadership. Urin must prove to the council that she is strong enough to rule. And you, human, will help her do that." Isaac was taken aback. He had come here as a healer, not a teacher of politics or leadership. But the queen's words were not a request, they were a command. And he understood that there was no room for hesitation. "I will do my best," Isaac said, his mind racing. He had never imagined that his role here would extend beyond helping Urin recover. But now he realized his commitment to this family and to the future of Veliris had deepened. He had a responsibility, not just to save a life, but to protect an entire world. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Isaac worked with Urin every day, teaching her the basics of diplomacy, human history, and the intricacies of leadership. At first, Urin had been hesitant, unsure of herself, her confidence shaken by her illness. But Isaac soon saw the spark within her. Despite her youth, there was a natural intelligence to her, an ability to understand complex ideas and think critically about the world around her. She was sharp, more than Isaac had expected, and she had an innate strength that grew with every lesson. Rethera watched closely, her presence a constant reminder of the political stakes. She had made it clear that Urin's success was not only about healing, but about proving her worth to the council. Every day, Urin grew more confident, more determined to meet the challenge. And as the days turned into weeks, Isaac began to realize that this child, this young Valyrian princess, was more than just the heir to a throne. She was a force to be reckoned with. Her strength, her mind, her heart, they were all powerful in ways Isaac had not fully understood before. But even as Urin's training progressed, the political situation worsened. Whispers of dissent grew louder in the palace halls, and Isaac could feel the tension mounting. The council had not been silent. They had begun to press Rethera for answers, demanding that she prove Urin's ability to lead. And though Isaac had no political experience, he could sense that the time for action was drawing near. Urin needed to be ready, now. The day of the council's meeting arrived. The grand hall was filled with the most influential leaders of Veliris, each one more powerful and more dangerous than the last. Isaac stood off to the side, watching as Urin, dressed in the regal robes of the royal family, stood beside her mother. The child had come a long way since the day she had been bedridden. Now she was poised, her posture confident, her eyes full of purpose. She was no longer the weak, fragile girl she had once been. She was a future leader. Rethera addressed the council, her voice steady and strong as she spoke of the challenges they faced and the need for unity. But Isaac could tell that the council members were not swayed by words alone. They were waiting for something more, something that would prove Urin's strength. Finally, Rethera stepped aside and Urin stepped forward. There was a brief silence, the tension in the room palpable. Isaac held his breath, his heart racing. This moment would define everything. Urin's voice, though soft at first, carried through the hall with surprising clarity. "I am Urin, daughter of Rethera, queen of Veliris. I may be young, but I am not weak. I have learned much in my time of recovery, and I am ready to lead." Her words were simple, but they rang with the power of truth. Urin's eyes swept across the council, meeting each one with a quiet, unwavering confidence. Isaac could see the respect beginning to form in their gazes. The tension in the room slowly began to shift. She continued, speaking of the future of Veliris, of the challenges they faced and the strength they would need to overcome them. Her voice was steady, her words full of conviction. She wasn't just a child anymore. She was a leader. When she finished, there was a long silence. The council members exchanged glances, some skeptical, some impressed. Finally, one of the elder leaders stood, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Very well," he said. "You have spoken well, Princess Urin. We will support you." A murmur of agreement spread through the room, and Isaac felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Urin had done it. She had proven herself to the council. The future of Veliris was secure, and with it the legacy of the queen. As the meeting drew to a close, Rethera turned to Isaac, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You were right," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You have done more than save my child. You have helped save our future." Isaac smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "I'm glad I could help." But even as he spoke, he knew that his time on Veliris was far from over. There was still much to be done. The queen's child had proven herself, but the work of rebuilding Veliris had only just begun. Isaac had come here to heal a life, but he had ended up playing a much larger role in the fate of an entire world. And as he looked at Urin, standing strong at her mother's side, he knew that he had made the right choice. He had found a place here, not just as a healer, but as a friend, a protector, and an ally. The future of Veliris was bright, and Isaac would stand.